Hey everybody, Tiffany here. Welcome to this new blog series that I'm going to give a try. I'm calling it PonTIFFications because I love the wordplay in terms of that, and I have to give my daughter Kelsey credit. She's the one who came up with the title after we'd done some talking, and she played around a little bit looking at the thesaurus and that sort of thing. So we think PonTIFFications is going to be a great title for this series. Now, if you found this by accident on YouTube, you might be like, what in the world is she going to talk about? Who is this person? So I'll introduce myself just briefly. I'm Tiffany Louder, and I'm known primarily, I guess, in the crafting community for co-hosting the Scrap Gals podcast. My bestie, Tracy Claiborne, and I have been doing that podcast for almost 3 years now. We just aired our 150th episode, and we're really proud of all of those conversations and the community that we've built together as part of that podcast. If you haven't listened, you definitely need to check us out on iTunes or by going to our website. It's thescrapgals.com. And we also have a pretty awesome Facebook community. We're up to around 3,800 members, I think, and we have a lot of fun talking about all kinds of crafty things. So if you haven't visited that, if you're just somebody who sort of listens to the podcast, or you found me by accident even here on YouTube, I hope that you'll give that a try. You'll consider joining us for our weekly show that comes out on Tuesdays, and also consider joining us in our Facebook community, because we do have a lot of fun. It's a positive place, and I think that we can use a little more of that in the world. So besides my crafty life, I am a high school English teacher. Occasionally I'll pinch hit and I'll teach history classes too, but my primary work is with English. I've been teaching for 23 years at the high school level. Can you believe that? That's crazy. And I spend my free time doing crafty things. I love to travel. I blog, so I love to write. I have dabbled a little bit in writing a book. It was really bad. Oh, it was really bad. I want to write another one to see if maybe I can do a little better job. And I love all things that are related to being creative. Instagram is awesome. I love taking a look at people's blogs. I love looking at YouTube videos, although I was a little bit late to that party, to be honest. And I like to dabble in all kinds of creative pursuits. I think it's fun to make things for my house. I love to stitch. I'm trying to learn how to draw and paint, although it's not going that great, but I'm trying, and the thing for me is I want to have fun and engage with people that maybe I wouldn't have met otherwise, and that's something that's pretty great that happens by being part of the crafting community. So if you found me by accident, welcome. I'm glad that you're here, and if you're somebody who's already a Scrap Gals listener or in our community, or you read my blog already, then thanks for coming back and checking out this blog series. You would think as a high school teacher that I'm used to being in front of people and that doing this sort of thing is not, not a big deal at all, but it's actually been pretty nerve-wracking. I'm not that comfortable being center stage, so this is a risk-taking venture for me, but I hope that you guys will be kind and that you'll get something out of it, and it'll be something that I can continue. But at this point, it's just, we're like beta testing, even though I have imaginings of maybe making this a couple of times a month, series, or, oh gosh, wouldn't it be awesome if I could do this once a week? That would be so great. I'm not going to make any promises at this point, but let's hope it goes well. Okay. So I got the idea that there are several people in the crafting community who are doing these kinds of question and answer sessions, and I thought that it might be fun for me to give it a try. Retro Hip Mama, aka Andrea Gray, is awesome, and I actually saw that she was doing a series very similar to this when I was still sort of thinking about it. And I watched hers and I was just so impressed, and I thought, you know, I want to give this a try too. Maybe there are things that people would like for me to talk about that would be a little bit difficult for me to write about in the community, or even to fully explain on my blog or something like that. And so I got on my blog, and I also got on our Facebook community, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this particular series, and I wondered if you think that it would be interesting, but also if you had questions that you wanted to ask me. And to my surprise, there were several people who actually did have questions for me. So what I thought I would do today is just start off and answer, I don't know, maybe 3 questions and see how it goes, and then, you know, maybe we'll go from there, right? So I'm not making this just about crafting. You can really ask me a question about anything. Now, I don't promise that I'll answer, but you can pretty much ask me anything. I have questions from my listeners and friends already about teaching, about travel, about scrapbooking, about stitching, about... somebody had a question for me about some clothes that I had bought. I mean, just pretty much anything that you'd like to talk about, I would love for you to share with me, and then I'll try to work it in to one of these. My hope is that it's varied and interesting enough that no matter what your particular interest is, you might find something helpful or useful or entertaining in every episode. So here we go. Now, I'm not going to share their names today because, like, I didn't ask anybody if that would be okay. And so, you know, I guess from here on out, I'll use your name unless you tell me that I can't. So, but today you're safe. You know, I won't call anybody out today. So one of the things that one of my friends asked me on my blog had to do with my travel plans for this summer. Now, if you've been following me a long time, you know that I absolutely love to travel. And a few years ago, I decided that a bucket list approach to the kind of the rest of my life was that as long as I continued teaching, I wanted to try to spend the summer in a different city in the world each year. So in 2015, I bit the bullet, and for the first time ever, I traveled by myself, and I traveled internationally. I spent 6 weeks in Paris, and it was absolutely amazing. It was everything that I thought it would be and more. And from that moment, I was hooked. You know, I knew that this crazy, risky thing that I had tried was so wonderful, and I couldn't wait to do it again. So in 2016, this past summer, I took a group of students to Europe, which is something that I do pretty frequently. We spent a couple of weeks traveling around the southern Europe, the Mediterranean area. We were in France, Spain, and Italy. And then they came home, and I spent another month in Madrid. Now, I have to say that I didn't love Madrid quite as much as I loved Paris, but Paris probably just spoiled me a little bit. I mean, come on. I mean, can any place like really compete with Paris? I'm not sure. And I was there during an incredible heat wave, and so that made things a little bit tough too. So as I approached thinking about this year, I was a little bit torn. You know, there was the possibility, I mean, I could just go back to Paris because it was so amazing. And I know that I could find all kinds of things to keep me busy for another month or 6 weeks. I wasn't worried about that. But I also felt like that might have been a little bit of a cop-out, you know, that what I want to do is try different places, learn about different cultures, and experience different cities. So why would I go back and just stay where I had been only a couple of years before? So I thought about it for several weeks, quite honestly, and I toyed with some different ideas, but I think that I have nailed down what my travel plans are for 2017. I'm taking a group of students again this year, this time to Northern Europe. We'll be in Northern Italy, we'll be in Germany, Switzerland, and we'll finish up in Paris. And when they go home, I'm going to spend another 6 weeks or so traveling through several cities that I've never visited before, starting in Eastern Europe. So I'll start in Budapest, and I'll stay about a week, and then I'll take the train to Vienna. and I'll stay about a week, and I'll take the train to Prague, and I'll stay about a week. And then I plan on going to Berlin for about a week, and then I'll go to Amsterdam, probably just for 4 or 5 days since I have been there before. Then I want to visit Brussels in Belgium for another 4 or 5 days, and then I'll finish up my time with 2 or 3 days in Paris before I fly home. Now, that's not really the bucket list that I had imagined, in that I'm not spending my entire time in just one city. But what I want to do is get a taste of several of those cities, since I haven't visited them before, so that when I travel again and I can stay for an extended period of time in another summer, I'll know which city I want to make my base. And I'm really hopeful that I fall in love with either Budapest or Vienna or Prague, because in my head at least, those are the places where I'd really like to make my home base for the next trip, and then kind of explore the areas around them. So that's the plan. Now, I haven't really done a lot of planning specifically for like where I'll stay or anything like that, because the company that I travel with for students has not told me for sure which day we're actually leaving. So I don't know exactly yet which day I'll be on my own. So I'll probably know that in a month or so, maybe 6 weeks. And then it will be a mad dash to like reserve train tickets and make my flight to Budapest, and to, oh gosh, try to find Airbnbs in all of those cities. I mean, it's going to be crazy intense once I know my dates to try to get everything lined up. And while I could go and just sort of wing it, since I haven't visited those places, I'm less inclined to wing it, because I think that I'll enjoy that little extra sense of security to know that, okay, yes, I have a place to sleep tonight. You know, if it were Paris, I feel pretty sure I could wander around and figure things out, and I even know a couple of people there, and I could find some place to crash if I needed to. I don't know so many people in Budapest, so that is something that I'm really excited about, you know, being able to plan all those things, but it's also something that's a little bit nerve-wracking. I was also excited to learn that several members in our Facebook community actually either live in those places or have visited or worked there. And so I'm going to be emailing and messaging these people to ask them questions and for tips and that sort of thing, so that they can maybe give me some guidance too. Beyond that, I'm probably just going to use some of the tour guides that I can get at the library or at Amazon, and I'll be using TripAdvisor, because that's one of my favorite websites when you're looking at planning a trip and asking questions and getting real life advice from people who've actually been there or who live there now. So that's what's on tap for travel in 2017, and I'm crazy excited. In addition to that, the Scrap Gals are actually having their first retreat ever in April 2017 in Salt Lake City. I've never been west of the Mississippi in the U.S. Can you imagine that? I'm so well traveled in Europe, but I've never been west of the Mississippi River. I mean, I guess I went to Houston once, but that was it. You know, everything else to the west is just unknown territory to me. It's all, you know, just stuff I've seen on television or in the movies. So I'm excited about getting to go to Utah for the first time at the end of April. And I'm also excited about helping, you know, at our first retreat. You know, I'm going to teach a class for the very first time, and that should be a whole lot of fun. And assuming that it all goes well, then we also plan to have a retreat the first weekend of October in Nashville. So if you are a scrapbooker and you haven't heard about these retreats and there's something that you're interested in, you should definitely go to our website and check out the link and get more information. The other thing that I thought I would talk about today, and another topic, has to do with how do I find time to do all these things? This is a topic that actually came up 3 or 4 different ways in terms of either emails or, you know, comments on my blog or in our Facebook group. And apparently people think I get a lot of stuff done. You all might be giving me a little more credit than I deserve, because I mean, I have big plans and I have big ideas, but I don't always actually follow through with them like I want to. So I'll give you the tips that I can, but please recognize that you might think I'm getting more done than I really am. Okay, so we've established that I like to dabble in a lot of different kinds of crafts. And we've established too that I'm very involved with scrapbooking, and also that I work full-time outside the home. I am lucky in that I don't have children at home. My daughter's all grown up. So when I am at home, my time really does belong to me. I'm not answering, to a spouse or to children for my time. I mean, I have a little dog, but he can't really complain that much. So, I have more free time than a lot of people do. I recognize that. And that's just part, I think, of the season of life that I'm in, and the way things that have worked out for me. But I do, of course, want to get together with a fella, and I want to go out with my friends, and there are lots of days that I just want to come home and sit on the couch and watch Netflix because I'm exhausted. And so, just like you, I also have lots of things that I juggle in my life. I do a couple of extra things at work in order to make some extra money to be able to travel. I teach ESS a couple of days a week after school, and then I also teach an adult night class 2 days a week for people who didn't graduate and get their diploma. It's a chance for them to go back and earn a diploma. So I'm pretty busy. When I'm home, my time is mine, but I'm pretty busy too. So I get that one of the big challenges for people who love creativity and people who want to be able to live kind of creative existences, one of the things we struggle with is like, how do you fit it all in? What do you do? So I have a couple of things that I do to kind of help that, and maybe these ideas would help you a little bit. While I love to scrapbook, I do not scrapbook on the go. It is not something that really works for me, and not something that I've really been attracted to trying to do. I've tried it some when I've traveled with some mixed results, but scrapbooking on the go is not, my idea of fun. So I do want to have something creative with me though, because there are times in our lives, and you guys all know this, when you're waiting at a doctor's appointment, or you're there for a meeting but nobody else is ready to go, or you have 30 minutes between things you have to do but it's not enough time to go home. Times and places like that pop up in all of our lives. So to give me some options and to be able to maximize my time, I do two things. I make sure that I always have a book with me, either electronically or an actual physical book. I prefer physical books. I guess that like dates me. It shows my age, but I prefer to actually be able to hold a book in my hand. And the nice thing about that is that I prefer fiction, so I find those very creatively stimulating. But I'm also trying to branch out periodically and either read a classic or read a piece of nonfiction, or maybe read articles instead. And so those are things that I can access pretty easily electronically, either on my phone or my laptop or my iPad. So I have something to read with me all the time. That's the first thing. And the second thing that I do is that I carry my stitching with me. I have recently picked back up cross stitching, which was something that I first learned how to do when I was, just barely a teenager. And I had all kinds of supplies and all kinds of great things, and I really haven't done much of it in the last 15 years. So, I don't know even what really made me pick it back up, but once I started stitching again, I realized how much I missed it. And so I take it with me pretty much everywhere I go. It goes in my school bag in the mornings. And during my planning period, I try to take 15 or 20 minutes, about roughly a third of the off time that I have. And I do a little bit of stitching as a way to kind of, like center myself, as a way to sort of just calm myself and do something for me that will help me get through the rest of the day. For anybody who is a teacher or has experience in teaching, you recognize that one of the big challenges is dealing with so many people who need you in so many different ways. It can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes when you're dealing with that many people and trying to accomplish these, these goals and these plans and all the pressures that go along with the job. And so taking 15 or 20 minutes to stitch during my planning period has been almost like a Zen-like thing for me that I've noticed this school year. And that was something that I really needed. I also have a tendency to either read or stitch for 10 or 15 minutes during my lunch break. And again, that's a chance for me to like just kind of recenter myself, have that break in the middle of the day before I finish up the afternoon. For that reason, I don't really eat lunch with my colleagues. You know, I prefer to just kind of stay in my room and be quiet. And I guess maybe some people think that's antisocial or whatever, but it's something that I need for my personality because I'm not naturally an extroverted person, but I have a job that requires me to be extroverted in a lot of ways. And so those little breaks of time during my planning and during my lunch periods really do help me be able to, you know, handle that in a way that's like emotionally healthy or whatever. Beyond that, I like to stitch in the evenings while I'm watching television. You know, sometimes I feel guilty at how much I like to watch TV, but you know, a lot of times I don't feel like I have the energy to come back here in my studio and work on a scrapbook project, but I do have the energy to kind of, you know, lay on the couch and work on some stitching while I have Netflix or Amazon Prime, you know, streaming in the background. And so that sort of feeds my need to be creative, but it also maximizes my time so that I'm not like wasting hours in front of the television that mean nothing and just surfing the internet randomly. I mean, I know people here do that too, right? I'm not the only one. And it makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something, keeps my hands busy. I just, it's relaxing for me. Now, sometimes if I've had a really hard day or, you know, my head is hurting or my eyes are bothering me, obviously I'm not going to do that. But I've noticed in the past couple of months since I've picked the stitching back up, you know, in a concerted effort, that I've really enjoyed relaxing in the evenings more without the guilt that kind of accompanies being the couch potato, just watching television, you know, passively. So those are the ways that well, and let me just add this. I also like to read right before I go to bed. I find it kind of relaxing. So I'll turn on, you know, some music very softly, and then in the last 20 or 30 minutes before I'm going to go to sleep, I'll do some reading. So that kind of explains how I fit in stitching and reading into my regular life. But then I have people who have said, well, how do you find time to blog? And when do you podcast? And how in the world do you ever make projects and pages? I mean, you've got a lot going on. So in terms of the podcasting, sometimes Tracy and I will do the podcast via Skype. I have a couple of afternoons or evenings during the week that I don't have a lot of duties that I have to follow through with. I don't have any plans generally. And so we can always do a podcast then. It takes us probably an hour and a half to 2 hours to really produce, you know, our week's podcast. And then of course she works on the editing and that kind of thing to finish it up. I mean, you don't get it live because you wouldn't want that. But if I'm not going to Skype with her to podcast, I generally go to her home in Nashville. She has a recording studio in her home. And we, you know, we'll try to do 2 or 3 shows when we get together. So I'll go down to her house, you know, once every couple of weeks, and I'll spend, you know, 6 or 7 hours, and we'll tape 2 or 3 shows, and we'll go out to dinner, and we might get really crazy and go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Joanne and do a little shopping. But it's so much better, I think. The quality of our podcast and our interaction with each other is so much better when we're actually in person recording. Now, I'm not sure that you guys can tell that. Maybe you know, you should start guessing. Were you guys together, or were you doing this on Skype? But it feels better. It feels more natural when we're actually in the same room doing the taping. You know, so that's one evening or one day, a whole day, like at least once every couple of weeks, and sometimes it's an evening, you know, every week, depending on how we're approaching it. In terms of course, you know, I live an hour away, so when I go to her house, I've got 2 hours of travel time, you know, to add to the actual taping time and all that sort of thing. When it comes to like actually making scrapbook projects, you know, you're like, okay, so you're talking about scrapbooking and you're stitching and you're reading and you're working. Okay, so when do you actually make any projects? You know, I struggle with that like everybody else. I actually don't like to scrapbook in little bits and spurts. I've tried it and it just doesn't really suit my style. I prefer to have 2 or 3 uninterrupted hours where I can work on a scrapbook project. So I generally do that on Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Now, occasionally I'll come in after work one day and I'll spend 2 or 3 hours in my studio and make some things and I'll feel amazing. But in general, I'm just too tired. I'm just wiped out after working all day and interacting with people all day, that by the time I get home, I just don't want to try to, you know, force it. So Saturday or Sunday afternoons are my big time to scrapbook. And then when I'm off work, when we have, you know, breaks, when we have professional development days, if we have a snow day, fingers crossed, if, you know, if it's a holiday, then a lot of times I'll reserve that for myself and I'll try to make, you know, projects for several hours. I find that I do the best job and I'm most productive when I set aside a block of time and I just work and play on whatever projects I'm interested in during that block of time. If I set myself deadlines that are too strict, or if I'm trying to just spend 20 or 30 minutes here and there, I'm not generally as successful. One of the things I want to work on in 2017 is actually being more specific in the time that I'm allotting to making scrapbook projects. So, you know, I may even get to the point where, like, I set an alarm on my phone on Sunday afternoon or something, because like anybody else, I have a tendency to be like, oh, I need to do the laundry, or, oh, well, maybe I'll just watch this movie, or, well, you know, I've got all these other things I need to do. I talk myself out of it more than I talk myself into it, you know? So that's something that I work on, just like all of you guys. But when I do sit down to get busy, I think that I produce pretty steady work. So, you know, I can make a layout that I'm really happy with in about 45 minutes to an hour. So one scrapbooking session means that I could maybe finish 3 layouts and be happy with those. Excuse me. In terms of blogging, if you followed my blog for a while, you may have noticed that I actually have kind of backed off on how much I'm blogging. For about 1.5 years, I blogged every single day. And it was, like, I felt really good about it. I was really proud of that. But at the same time, it really took up so much of my life that it became a little stressful. And towards the end of last year, I really started reevaluating how much time do I want to spend on my blog? What am I getting out of it versus what am I putting into it, and that sort of thing. And so I decided to back off, and instead of blogging every day, I try to blog 3 or 4 times a week. And it's not always the same day, and it's not always creative content. I mean, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but I think that 3 or 4 times a week is a good kind of happy medium for me. It means that I can spend probably, you know, 1.5 hours over the course of the week, and I can create all 3 of those blog posts and feel really good about them. Sometimes I have some downtime between one after school job to another. So like between, you know, tutoring in the afternoons and my adult night class, I have about 45 minutes. And so I can actually use that time to blog and to set up future blog posts. And so it's work, but it's work that is during a time that might otherwise just be kind of empty, wasted time. And by using that opportunity to work on my blog, I don't feel like resentful that it's taking away from something else that's fun, or something else that I would maybe rather be doing instead. So that would be, you know, all of that is to say that these are some hints that you might be able to incorporate into your own life. You know, when you have downtime, how are you spending that time? And is it reflective of the goals that you have for yourself and the priorities, you know, that you're setting for yourself? Like anybody else, I struggle between like doing things and then watching what other people have done. You know, am I just going to scroll through Instagram for an hour, or am I going to go ahead and like update my blog? And so I have to be kind of, you know, specific. I have to be sort of directed in the way I spend my energy. And I'm feeling pretty good about that balance right now, but it's something that I struggle with just like everybody else, you know. So I'll do one more question. Gosh, this is getting longer than I thought. Apparently I talk a lot, and you know, maybe my kids are onto something. They say that when I'm just going to give a few notes, I sometimes go overboard. So maybe this is the same sort of thing. All right, so I guess one of the last questions that I had, just taking a look at my list again, one of the last questions that I thought I would talk about for today actually had to do with somebody asked me if I had any plans to get another little dog. As you all know who have followed my blog or who have followed me on the Scrap Gals, I absolutely love dachshunds. They're my favorite. They're like the best dog breed ever, I think. And I've had a dachshund much of my adult life. My beloved dachshund Louder Dog actually died last May, and I would love to get another one, but I have put that off for a couple of reasons. I do have another dog. His name is Charlie, and he's a schnoodle. He's a Schnauzer Poodle mix. And, you know, he's pretty old. We think he's around 14 and a half. We're not exactly sure because he's a dog that I took in because he didn't have a home. You know how that goes. Anyway, and I just think it might be kind of unfair to Charlie to make him deal with a puppy again, you know, at this point in his life. So I've decided, you know, for today at least, I've decided that I'm not going to get another dog until, you know, I don't have a dog. And so I'm going to let Charlie Dog be the alpha until, you know, for the rest of the time that he has. And I think that's like the right thing to do. And I miss having a dachshund terribly, and I miss Louder Dog terribly still. But I think it's the right thing to do, and it really fits in better with my lifestyle as well. Now, when I do get a puppy eventually, you know, there's always the possibility that I would get a pair so that they would have each other like while I'm at work and stuff. But those are all just like, you know, things I'm thinking about randomly. I can tell you it'll be a dachshund, but I can't tell you when, and I can't tell you if it would be one or two, or even if they would be male or female. Maybe I'd get one of each. I don't know. For now, though, you know, I've got Charlie, and he is an ornery little old man, but, you know, he's a lot of company, and it's kind of hard to travel a lot like I do and to make arrangements for your dogs and your house and your yard and all those sorts of things. And so, you know, for now, Charlie Dog is head of the household. We'll just put it like that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, I think it went okay. I talked longer than I planned, and it was pretty unscripted. I mean, this is just me having a conversation with you about some of the things, the comments and questions that you'd left me. Hope you found something maybe a little helpful or interesting, and I would absolutely love it if you would leave me some feedback on the video. I mean, be nice, but if you would leave me some feedback on the video, maybe what you'd like for me to discuss, if there are specific things that you'd like to know or something you'd like to know a little more about in detail. You know, maybe I didn't talk about the part that you really cared about. I don't know. And, you know, we'll see in a couple of weeks. Hopefully there will be another episode of PonTIFFications up for you. But until then, I hope you have an amazing week or two, and that you go and be crafty. See ya.